So there's this myth that autistic people don't want friendships and relationships. And we'll look at why. Let's do a dive. So the first reason why an autistic person might want a relationship might actually be around trust. A lot of us have had negative past experiences with other people. And that's not just your bullying that we may have experienced at a young age. It may be also being ostracized. That's pushed out of social circumstances, of social situations, not being included. It's people having been quicker to dismiss us or walk over us at a young age. We may have been more likely to have people abuse or use our trust. We can be naturally more trusting at a young age. We take people at their word. We take what people say as truth. We don't always notice the subtleties, the context behind it, or the slight intonation differences that imply somebody's joking or saying something that isn't quite true or leading us along. So if we ask somebody, do you want to spend time together? Other person might go, sure, I would love to. Or something even more subtle than that, and we might not pick up on those subtleties. Often here in the UK where I live, we have a lot of situations where people are not always truthful or forthright with what we mean. Even the way we greet each other is by asking, how are you today? We all say back, I'm okay, thank you. Even if we're not okay. It's just part of the social expectations, the social convention. We wrote lie back, I'm okay, thank you, how are you? It's like a handshake almost when we greet each other. An autistic person might be very confused by that because you're not actually expecting somebody to go, oh no, I'm not okay, here's a 5-minute monologue of what's been happening. Even if you're not okay, you're meant to say, I'm okay, thank you. It's just a standard social etiquette. And there are a lot of things like that in conversation. More things in the UK is often if you say, do you want to hang out? Rather than being honest and say, oh no, not today, or I can't do. We're meant to have social niceties where we're going, oh yeah, that would be lovely. That would be great. We're not always upfront and honest about how we feel or what we want to do. That can be very confusing. In other places around the world, that is different. So this has a part cultural element to it. In another culture, you may be more likely to say, no, not today, I'm busy, I don't have time right now, 6 months time, more clear, concise information, or I don't view you as a friend, I just view you as someone we hang around at a party, but I love doing that. I don't, we get different messages. So it might be around trust, trusting what people say and trusting also how people are going to interact with you if you've had lots of negative experiences. And so that leads us on to a second one, which wraps into that, which is negative past experiences. A lot of us have had negative experiences with other people. Our trust being used, us being abused potentially by other people. Autistic people are more likely to be in abusive relationships and be abused by other people. And that means physical, that means sexual, that means in all sorts of unfortunate and uncomfortable different ways. So we might have had negative past experiences with other people, which may mean we're less likely to develop or want to develop strong relationships or strong connections, whether it be a romantic relationship or even friendships. Another reason is autistic people generally prefer certain types of social interaction. So often we interact in a city anyway, we interact in larger groups. We interact in loud, busy places like pubs or clubs with more than one person. Or outside where there's lots going on, lots of noise, lots of sensory information. Autistic person might prefer more one-on-one conversation. And so we sometimes are predisposed to have more intense singular relationships, one-on-one relationships. That intensity of that relationship can be part of the reason we don't seek out new ones. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of emotional investment. If something goes wrong, which it might have in our past, with our past intense relationships, then we can be less likely to seek out a new one because we're fearful, because we've had those negative past experiences. There's a term here called special people, which is where an autistic person will often have a very intense relationship with a singular other. And that can be great because you can share in their interests, you can discover new interests through them. It can be, very familial, like family. It can be safe. It's someone you can go to your problems. It can be very, very beautiful. You can have that in a romantic partner. You can have that in a friend. The challenges with that, though, is if the emotions may be higher. So if there is conflict, there may be more likely to be a split. It may mean that you're so engaged in the other person's interests that if anything happens to that relationship, you may lose part of those interests or your joy in those interests. And because your identity can be wrapped in those interests, there can be a bit of a loss of identity as well. that can be very, very difficult. So recovering from that and wanting to seek out a new relationship that may have a similar intensity might not be something you want to do. Another type of relationship style an autistic person might prefer is a more community vibe. What a community style relationship is or community style interaction is maybe that means you're not the focal point of a conversation. Maybe that means you're not the focal or one of the members almost of a group. You're in the peripheral, or you're in the same environment. You can get this at your local pub. People go there to watch sport, like football. They don't necessarily have constant one-on-one conversations with the people that are there in the group watching the football with. They're doing an activity together. So we see this in activity places. So everyone's going to an art class, so they'll be doing the art sometime, and then there'll be lots of little micro interactions. They'll be going to watch the football. They'll be talking about the thing they're doing. Or maybe they're just in the pub in general, so they're having a drink, doing their own thing, and then occasionally talk to the local regular people. It doesn't have the same demands as one-on-one interactions. And it doesn't have the same demands as a group kind of interaction. It's an activity-based, or it's just being in the same environment. You get this in a family home as well. So this may be what a lot of us are used to at a young age. Being in a family home, sometimes doing your own thing, sometimes communicating with those around you. You're present with other people. Other people are present with you. You're just not vocally present or attentionally present. You just exist. And that can be very comfortable. That's also what we often have with partners as we grow up as well. So some autistic people may prefer that community style. And in a city, that can be activity groups, it can be interest groups, it could even be just your local pub. And that may be completely socially satisfying with someone. Maybe they don't have any named friends. Maybe they just have acquaintances they interact with at a local community centre, and that may be completely fine for them. It's safe, it's not intense, it's not demanding. Their social faux pas, the mistakes they make in conversation, are less problematic because the conversation demands less. It's less demanding. You don't have to potentially mask as much. You don't have to learn about other people's interests so much. It's casual conversation, you joining in when you have something to say, when you feel like it, when it's safe, when it's comfortable. Some autistic people may only prefer to engage with a romantic partner. That actual intensity, the safeness, the comfort, the physicality of it could be what brings, it could be that's what their needs are, and they don't particularly need a lot of other things. Some autistic people I know prefer lots of interaction with lots of people, new people, engagement. Some prefer just a few close friends. Some people, they can have 2 intense relationships at once. Intense is the wrong word, but you know what I mean. It's 2 best friends almost at once. Some it's only one, some it's one and their partner, some it's only their partner. I think this is the same for all humans, if I'm completely honest with you. We're all diverse. We all have past experiences which impact the relationships we seek out and the kind of relationships. Just with autistic people, what we're often talking about is we're talking about something that's more noticeable, something that is, we often say, more one end of the extreme. And I'd say this is maybe less to do with the autism and often due to those past experiences and the trauma that comes with growing up being different, and the trauma that comes with people not understanding, with people sending constant negative messages to you, from those things that happen like that abuse of trust and being used and all those unpleasant things that make you feel not safe with other people, or may mean you don't have the same social experience. So that leads into our next one, social experience. A lot of us may not have the same experience with socializing. We may not know how to talk to new people. We may have had a childhood where we interacted mainly with our family. We may have had broken relationships, or at school and everything else. It may have been turmoil, and it may have been pushed out and bullying. So we may not have had the same social opportunities. The same opportunities to learn what to say to someone, learn how to connect, learn to show attention or show we care, to resolve conflict, to communicate our needs, to actually speak up. If you've been dismissed from a young age, you may not be so good at speaking up about your needs. You may push them away, see them as not important. All of those little things you need to interact with someone, we may not have learned. And some of those things you can only learn through experience. We can talk about them, we can explain, we can give social stories, we can do role play to help an autistic person understand how to engage in a social situation, and that can help massively. But sometimes you need to go through those situations, you need to make the mistakes, you need to just live, you need to experience. And that's less socially acceptable as an adult. If you start developing friendships and make the mistakes people made as a child, when you're in your mid-20s, 30s, other people are going to view you as problematic. They might view you as controlling. They might view you as abusive because you might view you as being angry or irritable, or lots of other negative terms, because maybe this is the first time you're figuring out how to resolve conflict. Maybe it's the first time you're figuring out how to put a point across of you, to be heard, to be listened to, and you have to take a step back. You're emotionally processing completely new situations, completely new emotions. That takes time. And other people don't have the same patience for the amount of time it might take you, because they forget that when they were young, which is maybe where you're at learning those things now. It did take them longer when they were young, but they were younger. Now you're an older person, it's not so acceptable. So your experience. You may not have the same experience as others. You may not know what to say, how to interact. You may not have learned about your own emotions, emotionally processing those situations. There is a lot of learning around engaging with other peoples. And if you don't have that understanding as an adult, people are less forgiving. You get even more negative messages, which reinforces the negative messages you got off the past, which can again make autistic people less likely to even want to try. They may be more fearful, more vigilant of other people's negativity or negative expressions, which is why it's hard. We do get a lot of negativity off people, and throughout life we maybe were taught to get back up, to keep going, to recognize that this isn't negative about us, it's about the situation. We can repair, we can resolve that. That's experience again. If you don't have the experience, every slight, every misunderstanding, every perceived moment of negativity is more impactful, it's more difficult. So we may get autistic people that are more sensitive to rejection, a term we call rejection sensitive dysphoria or rejection sensitivity. We may get more autistic people that are more likely to act emotionally volatile, and unfortunately that's a part of learning development. We need support to go through that. We need to learn that it's okay. We need to learn how to manage our emotions, and if we haven't had those things from a younger age, that puts us at a severe disadvantage. And with all of that, we have anxiety. All of this creates anxiety. Anxiety is not a part of autism. It's a part of the environment and autism. If you've grown up being different, if you've grown up being pushed out, being bullied, you're more likely to be anxious. If you have all these misunderstandings, you're more likely to be anxious. You're more likely to be socially anxious, or even have a specific anxiety disorder where you ruminate, worry, and obsess about social situations or other people or yourself, or you've internalized those external worries about yourself or about cleaning or about numbers, or I'm using common stereotypes here, but it can be literally anything. Anxiety can be a major reason why people don't engage. And that's not just the social situation itself, it's everything from getting to the social situation, to how you process it afterwards, to the expectations, to all of the birthdays, Christmases, all those things. What are the rules there? If you haven't had those opportunities, what am I meant to do for someone's birthday or Christmas? I do this for my family. We may have completely different rules in my family, but this is a friend. And if you miss those important things, or you do the wrong thing, it's a massive problem. Other people, like if you don't get someone a birthday card or a birthday present when you're close to them, they view that as you not caring, and you may not even realize why. There's anxiety inherent in all these new social situations that you're not familiar with. And there's anxiety due to the sensory things, the environment, the travel. So many things can cause an autistic person anxiety. Another reason might be simply transitions. Transitions, when you're engaging with friendships, there's a lot of them. In your home environment, you may have control, it may be consistent, but when you're interacting, when all of us are interacting with other people, it can quite often be outside of the home environment. For this reason, some autistic people may prefer to meet friends in the home, and only in the home, or in safe spaces. But when you're with other people, they have desires, they have needs, they want to go to certain places, they want to do certain things. And then there's transitions involved in that. There's new things that you're not familiar with that may cause anxiety. There's moving from one situation to another with different sensory environments, with different expectations and rules, and that causes anxiety. There are transitions. There's a lot more of those transitions. And that's not just moving from one place to another, it's even going to the bathroom at a different place, what food you're going to eat at this new place or different place, how you interact, how you move, the people like to be there. There's so many different things that you may not be familiar with. I see a lot of autistic people, when they do interact with other people, they go to the same familiar places. Some strategies we actually talk about teaching parents is to introduce your child to chain restaurants or chain places that are likely to be there in their future, that give them that safe, consistent space that they can meet up with people in adulthood. That doesn't mean they'll always use them, but it gives them a nice, stable, consistent place, a launch pad to interact with other people as adults or as teenagers. And from that, they'll then probably explore other things or similar things, or getting used to going to different different places will make somebody less fearful, less anxious of exploring, of trying new things, of meeting people, of trying new foods, of all sorts of different things as they grow up. And with that, we've got to think about the environment. When we do interact with other people, the other people change our environment massively. Even if we're meeting them in the home, they have different sounds, different smells, different light reflects off their clothing differently. They have different patterns. There's echoes around the room. There's so many social things that just come with the person. And then there's how they interact with the environment. And then if we're meeting somebody outside, we've got to travel to them. Different smells, different tastes, from the air, from the food we're having with them, from the lighting as we get on the bus or the public transport or the car. There's all these sensory stuff bombarding us. Our own body movements to get somewhere. Our own bodily, internal body things, hunger, tiredness, thirst, all of those things. There's so much there that maybe in the home environment you have routines. You have consistent ways of meeting those needs, reducing sensory things, and knowing what to expect. Suddenly you're outside. Everything has changed. And everything's changed with every different environment you meet a person. That's why when we talk about helping an autistic person engage with a situation, to communicate with others, we talk about sensory stuff. Sensory first. Change the sensory environment. If you are in a very busy, loud, chaotic place with a lot of noises, with music in the background, with people moving around, with lots of different smells of food or beverage, every human would find it more difficult to emotionally connect, to empathize with another, to hold in mind the other person's point of view, and to figure out what they're going to say next, or how they're feeling or thinking in a situation. Those are all things that we say autistic people struggle with. And it's true, autistic people can struggle with them. Some of that's going to be environmental. If we put you in a busy, loud cafe right now, with the screaming children and clanging noises everywhere, you're going to have a bit of a harder time connecting with the person in front of you, of understanding their point of view. Now, when we're talking about sensory, we are talking about sensory processing. We're not talking about differences to our ears and our noses. We're talking about how the brain processes that information. So sure, if you're in a busy cafe, your brain may eventually filter out all that background noise. You may stop hearing all of the clanging noise and other people talking and fully focus on the friend. If you're walking out in public, your brain may go, oh, the ambulance is far away. You may not even register it. But for an autistic person with sensory processing differences, that has had negative sensory experiences, those things feel louder, they're more present, the brain focuses on them, and they're like danger. They demand attention. So if we can change some of those sensory things, generally we say reduce, then we can help somebody engage, to feel, to connect, to communicate. Massive. What's another one? Well, we talked about social masking already, but social masking. If you have grown up different and you've had to mask all your life, it's a lot of effort to potentially maintain that mask. If you have to think about how to interact within a situation, what you're going to say, you have to, in that moment, maintain eye contact, smile at the right times. That's draining in the moment. It's draining before as you mentally prepare about what you might say. It's draining afterwards when you process it all mentally in your head, maybe verbally out loud. You're practicing being in front of the mirror before, after, what I might have said, done wrong. Lots of negativity, lots of attention in the moment, a lot of stress, and it's ultimately suppressing who you are. It's incredibly draining. Masking can be great. Don't get me wrong, it can help you connect and engage. But depending on how much you mask and to what degree, and to what you have your sense of self and supportive environments and your own freedom, and it can be incredibly draining, incredibly hard, and incredibly soul destroying. So masking adds a massive layer onto a situation. Again, if somebody is masking in the moment, if you're constantly having to remember to look in someone's eyes, to nod along, to smile, you're going to miss things. You're going to miss things in conversation. There's going to be disconnections, and that is big. And then you're going to worry about that afterwards. Or if you're struggling because of sensory things and you're having to master it, you're going to miss jokes, you're going to miss things, and it's going to cause you problems. So masking can allow us to socially connect and make a social environment easier, but it itself can come with issues that we're not going to mask perfectly. None can. And we are likely to have to put a lot of effort into maintaining that mask. In that, it's preparation. We've got to think all these things so far we've talked about in order to reduce the impact of engaging with another person or going to a new situation. You've got to prepare. Preparing. We just listed a bunch of potential challenges, the preparation that goes into that. And nowadays, we have Google Maps. Google Maps will tell you how many people are likely to be in a location, how busy it is. That's great information. If you've been to the same place before, that's great. You know reasonably what to expect. All of these things, that's social stories, that's role play, that's looking at pictures, these are the things we say help autistic people. It reduces the prep. It allows us to know what to expect, and that is control. Okay, knowing what's going to happen, that gives you a sense of control. That gives someone control of a situation. That's incredibly helpful. But preparation can take a lot of time. A lot of time. Now, we talked about focus as well. As autistic people, we often have our own interests. So focusing on someone else is more difficult. It's more difficult at first. When someone's new, you're not necessarily interested in them so much as a person, perhaps. Okay, you may be very interested in new people, but if you're not interested in the same interests as you, it's more effort to listen, to nod along, to smile. As you develop a liking for that person, it is more easy to listen, to hear them, to talk about their interests. As you get used to talking to them, maybe you connect and find middle grounds between both your interests, or a way of segueing back and forth that means you're communicating, but that is not listening. The way I've seen a lot of autistic people communicate at first is, rather than talking about the same thing, they may both be talking in parallel about each of their things, each of their interests, or each of their own kind of topics within a topic. And this can, if you're listening to this can seem that both are just talking about themselves at each other. It can seem very strange. It can seem like they're not paying attention. But what they're doing is they're going back and forth until they find more common ground, until they find a shared way of communicating. Or perhaps they do it where there's two different conversational streams at the same time. I see this more in ADHD people, but where they're not talking about one thing at once, they're talking about two things at once, and they will bounce between them. This may be more noticeable if you're talking to somebody, say, on Messenger or via text or via a type of social media. You may have more than one stream of conversation that you're talking about at the same time. That can be true in person as well with conversations. You may not notice that you're doing this if you're the person, but other people might, because they might find that jarring. Some autistic people I know, they prefer to stay on one specific topic. Other people I know, that two topics at the same time across each other works brilliantly for them. It adds to seamless, fast, continual conversation that just has a flow to it, because there's two flows, so the flow never ends. Autistic people can struggle with disconnects. They're the moments in conversation where we miss the mark, where we're saying one thing and we don't get the interaction we expect. Everybody gets that. That's a trouble that we can have with engaging with people who are not autistic. If there's those moments of disconnect, people are likely to walk away. From what I know on this, if a neurotypical person is talking to an autistic person and there is a moment of disconnect, neurotypical is more likely to leave. I have definitely noticed that. You may have as well. If there is moments that we show we don't understand, or there's an idiosyncrasy, or that we speak a bit too much or not enough, or not at the right time, they're more likely to leave, to walk away from us. Whereas me with my friends, if we have those moments of disconnect, we are more likely to keep going, or to come back, or to take a break and come back. We keep going. We're aware that we are different, that things are not going to work perfectly. That's been our experience. Maybe that is experiential, or maybe that's just because we're different. I can't tell you that reason, but disconnects are going to be a big reason why we struggle in conversation. So focus goes all into this. It may be about our interests and other people sharing them. It may be because there's so much going on in the environment, it's hard to maintain that focus in the other person on what they're saying. Maybe we would be able to socially motivate ourselves to listen, to engage, to talk, but because there's too much going on, it's hard. I know if you put me in a busy, chaotic environment, my focus reduces massively. In fact, I also become more childlike because I cannot process things to the same degree, to an adult degree in that moment. I'm more driven by impulse. I am more silly. That's what I can manage in that situation. To others, that can seem quite strange. As a result of that, I can seem like a different person in different environments. And that's because I can't do the same thing. I can't think to the same degree. I can't listen to the same extent in different environments. If you put me in a club, I'm not going to have very intellectual conversations with you. I'm sorry. Number one, a club is not the right environment. Perhaps it is. Actually, quite often it happens. But number two, it's very loud, chaotic, busy. There's lots of, it's a different environment. So environment may impact how we interact, which may mean we don't feel like ourselves in a different situation, where we have a lot more anxiety because we feel we've misrepresented ourselves, or we've lied, or we've been dishonest, or we haven't had the interaction we wanted to. So I just went over a hell of a lot of reasons why autistic people might not want to engage in social interactions, relationships, and friendships. I've bound to have missed a ton if you could put in the comments below any I have missed, any of your own experiences, that will be incredibly helpful. It will help me when I make a new video like this, so I can mention the things that you have. Thank you. It will also help any parent that comes along that is wondering how is their children going to struggle in the future. What things can I do to help? Thankfully nowadays, there's a lot more understanding, there's a lot more awareness. Don't like that word awareness, but there's a lot more understanding about autism. So people generally know their children are going to be okay in the future, but they're looking at things they can do to help them. So there is less trauma around it. And the things you say can really help them. Okay. Also, it can help me with when I'm talking or explaining to any healthcare professional, this is a thing they may struggle with. This is a great solution. So please don't just give me your troubles. Give me the solutions, the things that you've found helped in situations, the things that your family or your friends have done to include you. I know one thing that's really helped me across time is having friends call me in when I've made mistakes, not call me out. That means, because my understanding has been different as I've grown up. I may have made more social mistakes, which would have been quite problematic. But because I've had friends around me to explain, to recognize I'm a good person and to teach me what I should be saying or doing instead, that has helped me, move into the adult world a lot quicker. So please put everything that you can think of, or not just everything, even just one thing in the chat. It will be read by other people. It will be helpful. And hopefully anyone else that comes to watch this video will make them feel less alone as well. And thank you for watching. Please subscribe to me. I release a lot of videos and I don't necessarily get many watches or subscribes. So, motivate me, make me feel like I'm doing something positive. I need it. And see you next time.